Welcome. Today is March the 14th, Sunday afternoon, and we're here with Joe West, who's running for Place 2 City Council. Joe, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start off by telling the voters who Joe West is, and then get into why you've decided to run for City Council Place 2.
There's not really much to say about me. I'm a pretty normal guy, pretty average. I do a lot of work, try to help as many people as I can, and hopefully running for city council allows me to do that in a bigger capacity.
So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Pampa.
In Pampa?
Yep.
And what brought you to Amarillo?
Oddly enough, some friends that were in a bad situation, and I could help with that.
And how long ago was that?
2009, so 12 years ago.
So you've been over here for 12 years from the big city of Pampa.
Yeah.
So what do you do for a living?
I work for Amarillo College. I'm an administrative assistant for their community enrichment department. We don't deal with any of the academic stuff. We get to do stuff like fun classes, leisure classes, art for seniors, kids college, motorcycle licensing classes, that sort of stuff.
That sounds like an interesting job.
It's a lot of fun. We help a lot of folks and deal with a lot of problems and solve a lot of issues there.
So you're working for the public, basically.
Pretty much.
So what made you decide to run for city council?
A lot of the things that I'd seen, I think there are some pretty valid criticisms of the current city council. And I figured that I would throw my hat in, try to see if I could maybe help think of some creative ways to help solve some of the issues that are popping up in Amarillo or have popped up in the past, and try to help as many people as I can.
So you say there's some issues. What are some of those issues that you think you can be effective on?
I think as far as the city communicating with the citizens, I think there's been some issues in the past there with like the city council meetings. I know public comments are maybe not discouraged, but they're definitely not focused on. And I think, the citizens are the people that you're beholden to as a city council member. And I think that they should have most of the say in what goes on in those city council meetings.
So what is your plan to fix that?
I think moving the city council meetings to a time where it's more conducive for working class families, parents, anybody that works a 9-to-5 job should be able to have their voices heard at the city council meetings. So moving it to evenings or moving it to mobile city council meetings, moving them to weekends, anything that we can do to help more people have a voice in the politics of the city is a good thing, in my opinion.
So one of the main issues you think the voters are concerned about is transparency on the part of the current council.
I definitely think that's a concern.
What other issues do you think need to be addressed?
Personally, I'm for single-member districts. I think we've got a vast and varied and diverse population in Amarillo, and the issues that affect one neighborhood, might not even be considered if your city council member represents or lives in a different neighborhood. I think having representation from the specific areas of the city can help us quite a bit to help get those issues that are particular to a different area of the city addressed.
Would you have to amend the city charter, or would that have to be done at the state legislature? Do you know?
I believe it has to be changed at the city charter. At least all the research that I've seen so far tells me that.
So do you think they should keep the elections in odd years in May, or should they move that to the general election in the even number of years in the fall with the other elections?
if you're just going by turnout, I mean, it makes complete sense to me to move it to even numbered years with the November election. If the only thing you're concerned about is turnout, that's one of the best reasons to get it moved, in my opinion. If you would have the most amount of people in Amarillo having their voices heard, saying what they want out of the city, I think that's what should happen.
Do you have any idea what it costs to run an election?
No clue.
Well, we know that would certainly save some money if you eliminated that extra election.
Well,
I think it costs around $85,000 in Potter County to run an election, and then you've got Randall County.
Yeah.
And how do you stand on single member districts? You mentioned that. Yeah. How would you divide that up? You have 4 precincts and JP precincts, I call them. Some people call them commissioners precincts, but then you have Randall County. So do you have any ideas on how you would structure those districts? Would they correlate with the current JP districts? Would you, if that's the case, you'd have to add
2 seats, right?
Yeah, probably 2.
Oh, I haven't looked into that aspect of it as far as looking through the precincts. But if there's an existing structure there that makes sense and isn't going to cut too many people out of that representation, then I say yeah. So maybe there's something else we need to look at. But I didn't mention this at the start, but I also advocate for adding 2 at-large seats. So 1 for Randall, 1 for Potter.
So if you did that, you would have upwards of 8 on the city council.
Yep.
Well, I guess we could just have precinct chairs from each party be the city council.
Well, if it works out like that,
then we wouldn't have to do anything extra. Because both counties have 24 precincts. They may lap city limits.
Okay, I gotcha.
I'm not quite sure how they'd structure that. And I'm not sure if the county commission, well, I know the county commissioner precincts do lap outside the city limits, so that may not be an issue, though. Something to think about.
Definitely.
No, that's an interesting concept. And to me, I'm all about saving money and getting as much voter participation as we can in an election. And I think it would greatly enhance that.
I do think so as well.
So what other issues do you think are going to be on your agenda?
Well, I'm constantly trying to think of I'm not very good on social media. I do have my, ear there sometimes, and I do know like big item pickup for the trash is a particularly I don't know if it's one of the bigger issues, but it is definitely one of the issues that people are more vocal about. Because as soon as city council members or challengers start seeing trash piling up on the street, it's a really easy issue to highlight because there's something physical you can see. It doesn't look good. It's a blight or an eyesore. So naturally, I've got an idea on some things that, hopefully some creative solutions that I could do to help the people of Amarillo. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
One thing I was thinking, I've heard a couple of the other city council, some of the other challengers bring up, what was it? Maybe using like a private company contracting someone to pick up the excess that the city's not able to take care of. And if it helps a small business in Amarillo, I think that's a good idea. I'd like to take it in a little bit of a different direction, and the money that we're using for, paying the city workers that are taken from their normal routes and put on the big item pickups, the gas that they're using, the maintenance on the vehicles, those salaries and those benefits. I'd like to see if there's something we could do to maybe incentivize people to help be a good neighbor. If we can incentivize people instead of having to pay at the landfill to dump big items, that sort of thing, maybe you could pay them per pound or something if they take those big items there for a neighbor or for themselves instead of dumping it.
Yeah, I mentioned that to the previous city manager. I said, why don't y'all pay people to bring trash to the dump? $10 a ton, you'd have the cleanest city in town.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, and it helps the people.
Exactly. I mean, charging people to clean up their property doesn't make a lot of sense.
Or, fining them for, having something that sits that's might be out of their control. Because not everybody's got access to truck, trailer, and not the city's, not exactly timely in some areas of the city as far as getting those big items picked up. Or they don't know, and sometimes they don't hardly make it down where there's, people dumping stuff.
Well, I think what they need to realize is that they're here to take care of our needs, not our wants.
Yeah.
And if they take care of the needs, the wants will come.
I agree.
But too often, once people get into elected office for some reason, they start looking at things differently, and I don't quite understand why. It happens at all levels of government. All of a sudden, they start working for the government instead of the people.
Well, I'm pretty familiar with the bureaucracy that goes on at AC. I don't know how much is going to translate to, the city political level. I'm sure quite a bit more, but I'm familiar with the red tape, familiar with getting around the red tape and, kind of facilitating the conversation and trying to get stuff done. Doesn't always work, but I do know a little bit about that bureaucracy.
Well, it happens in every city, and pretty soon the bureaucracy controls. It's not the elected officials, and it's not the city manager anymore. It's the clerks, and that's the problem that we have on the national level and somewhat on the state level. And then you go into a city like Dallas or Austin, it's at the city level. We don't want to see that happen here, but we got to make them do their job.
Are you saying that, as far as accessing the local politicians goes, or being able to have a voice?
No, I'm not really saying that. I'm talking about how the city is run. So the people in charge don't really know what's going on after a while. They're not able to keep up with it, and they're not paying attention. So it's the mid-level people that are creating the paperwork because they want to hire more people so they can do less work. And pretty soon you have a bloated bureaucracy that's very inefficient, and you're stuck in the trap if you're a business person or a builder or somebody trying to get something done in the city, or you're putting in utilities and you're sitting there waiting for months for a decision, and everybody's afraid to make a decision when you should be able to pick up the phone and have it resolved in 30 minutes.
I do agree. As far as being able to, have timely responses to questions of your local government.
I forget I didn't coin the term, but I use it a lot. I call it the soft tyranny of bureaucracy. And it happens in companies. It happens everywhere. It's the natural order of things. Yeah. Things get bigger and bigger and more bloated, and the payroll goes up and less gets done. You typically get a lot more done with fewer people.
I could definitely see that there are cases for that.
But everybody, it's just the way, it's nature. It's like the weather. Yeah. Storms get so big they bust.
Yeah. The term too many cooks, too many chefs in the kitchen.
Yep.
I do agree that does happen.
What do you think about the city? One complaint I hear about from people is, what's all this focus on downtown? Why are they focused just on downtown? And, I know they're doing some stuff in the Heights. They're talking about it and a few other places. But one thing I hear from the voters is that what's the big deal about downtown? What do you think about that focus?
Well, it depends on how you argue for it. I mean, we've got I-40 goes right across or right beside downtown. I-27 cuts straight through. If you're looking for tourism dollars and state tax or sales taxes from tourists, it's a great location to beautify. And it's a great location to have a lot of stuff to do at. As far as it being what appears to be the sole focus of current city council and past city councils, I don't think we should be focusing or putting most of our political effort towards downtown. I think there's a lot more things that we could do to help the citizens of Amarillo. I do know of some programs that are going on in like the Barrio in North Heights, San Jack. But to me, those aren't substantial programs that help people. They do build communities. They do give you a sense of pride in your neighborhood. But I do think we should be doing more.
Well, is it the city's responsibility to do that, or is that up to the individuals in those communities?
I think I don't see any reason why the city couldn't help. It could be with zoning laws, things like that up in North Heights. And I know that's something that they're working on. But I'm talking about things like, we have food deserts in certain areas of Amarillo. And those are just areas where you, as a person in that neighborhood, aren't necessarily easily able to access fresh fruit, fresh produce. I think that's an issue that we should address.
And how would you go about doing that?
I've been thinking of a couple different ways. I'm currently helping a couple of organizations, or I'm helping an organization in North Heights build a community garden. We haven't done a lot now, but I've built some planter boxes. We're going to be building the plans for a greenhouse are there. The plans for giving away the produce that is grown there is in the works. And I'd like to see one of those in every neighborhood that's got a food desert.
Well, people have backyards. Why couldn't they plant their own garden?
Oh, they can, but not everybody has the means. If you're in an apartment complex, I mean, that's a big one right there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in an apartment complex, you might be able to grow some herbs in a windowsill. Or, your only access to fresh fruit and produce could be like North Heights discount store. Or you may not be able to walk, easily find transit to those places. So I'd like to see if we can get the community to address that, help empower people to do that on their own if they're able to, and just try to help as many people as possible with issues like that.
Well, that sounds interesting. Do they allow chickens in those neighborhoods?
As far as I'm aware, there's not a neighborhood in Amarillo that you're not allowed. I mean, I've got chickens. I've got 4. And, that's where all of our eggs come from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, chickens you can keep in a pretty small place, so keep the varmints out of them.
Yeah. Well, we've got dogs as well, so.
And the dogs, they can be pretty bad.
Yep. We've got our. Sorry.
No, I said that's an interesting concept, huh?
Well,
I think people will like it.
I hope so. If things get big, I went to Waco a couple years ago to stay with Mission Waco, and they had received a grant for I think around $2 million, and they had an entire hydroponic garden system, solar powered. They had everything that they grew. They sold in an attached supermarket that had been abandoned for years and years. But that hydroponic greenhouse fed that entire neighborhood. I'd like to do something like that. And if we can get a grant for it, it wouldn't cost the city anything, wouldn't cost the citizens anything.
So would the citizens work in this greenhouse or community garden? Would the communities, would they all pitch in and help?
Ideally. Or if not, I mean, I'm a volunteer there. I'm putting my blood, sweat, and tears into it. So I'm not going to, if it were up to me, I wouldn't require it of anybody. But if they want to, then absolutely.
So what's going to keep somebody from coming and taking all the produce?
I don't know.
Do you have any way to meter it out, or how would that work?
I wouldn't be in charge of that decision. So I'm just here to build, or I'm just helping to build.
I mean, that's always a problem. You've got one character that wants to come in and scarf up all the food and
that may happen.
ruins it for everybody. Just have to figure out how to do it. Give everybody just so much or something.
Yep.
No, it sounds like an interesting plan. Another issue that I hear the voters complaining about is the parking fees downtown. How do you stand on that?
You're talking about parking on the sides of the streets, or are you talking about the parking garage?
On the street.
I don't agree with that. I think you're already paying your taxes as an Amarillo citizen. You should be able to park during normal business hours down there for no cost.
Well, they say they want businesses to come downtown, and once they get them coming, then they put a tax on them to use those businesses. But if you're out off Sonse, you don't have to pay for parking. Yeah. I mean, to me, that's illogical, and I don't understand the reason behind it. Well, I understand it. They think they're going to make money.
Yeah. It is a little contradictory in my opinion. Yeah. But I do not think you should have to pay for parking downtown.
So that's something that you'll probably work to get rescinded. Yeah. What about what I call the rain tax? They call it a drainage fee.
As far as, to improve the drainage that we have in Amarillo?
Well, first, to have drainage, you have to have rain. We haven't had any in almost a year. Until yesterday. We got a little bit. Mm-hmm. But we've operated here for over 100 years. Rain, water runs downhill. What are they doing drainage-wise to change that concept?
As far as why should we be paying that drainage fee?
Right.
At this point, given the areas of the city that you do see flooding in whenever there's any sort of precipitation, I think we need to utilize those funds more effectively.
And where do we see flooding?
The last time I could remember, it was over a year ago, but there was a big, was it under Western? Or sorry, not under Western, under Avondale, and then there's one other.
Oh, there
area.
At Bell, yeah. Well, the highway does, but that whole Western.
Oh, that's TxDOT
plateau there is in the bottom of a playa lake. Mm-hmm. Where Paramount is and Olson. That's in a bottom of a playa lake. But they let people build there. I mean, that's like building in a river bottom. You're going to get flooded out.
Yeah.
How can you change that with a fee? I don't understand how you can make water run uphill.
Well, if I had to
guess.
Unless
you use lift stations.
Or pumps.
Yeah.
If it were, I have to assume that because we have those issues, they're not effectively applying that drainage fee that they charge to things like expanded pipes, better drainage, being able to effectively clear debris that might clog up the drainage. And if they're not effectively using it, then as far as a solution to that, I think we have to have a conversation on how to be more effective with what they're charging. And if they're not able to be effective, then we shouldn't be paying it.
Well, we property owners have a big problem with it. And most of the property owners are voters. and we believe it's, me included, it's property tax. I call it a rain tax because they said it was for drainage. Well, that means, where does the drainage come from? It comes from above. It's an act of God. We didn't produce the water. The property owners didn't. And it's been like that forever.
Okay, I got you.
And we believe, to me, a fee, when you mention the word fee, in my mind, that goes to something that's optional. You have a choice. I'm going to pay a fee to go to a park or library or something that the city does that not everybody takes advantage of. So you call it a fee. It's a choice. But if it's mandatory and it's based on your property size, to me, that's a property tax. So I think they're in some a gray area there. Well, I don't think it's gray at all. I think it's illegal. I think they're stealing from the citizens.
I don't know if I subscribe to that.
They're not being honest.
So how would you propose just completely abolishing that?
Personally, yes, absolutely. It's a nightmare because they send a separate bill. They claim they can't put it on their utilities. I know why they can't put it on the utilities is because it's not a utility, but they say it is. So it costs them probably nearly as much as they're collecting in the amount of staff, paper, envelopes, postage, printing than they're collecting. And it creates property owners, particularly people like me that own multiple properties, hundreds of properties, a nightmare.
I can imagine it adds.
And then that adds to my cost. So that's another tax on those of us who improve the city. So it's just like one bad decision after another. To me, if you need money, be honest. Raise the property taxes, which they've done, or say, look, we screwed up. We blew a bunch of money we shouldn't have, and we're raising trash $5 a month. Nobody would have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But what they've done is create an absolute nightmare. But they said Houston did it, so it's okay. Since Houston did it, we should do it in Amarillo.
I'll admit that that's not an issue that I've personally had brought up to me, but that is something I'd be willing to address.
I mean, I just don't understand why they want to overcomplicate everything and then cost all this money. I mean, they could have raised twice the money if they'd have done it in a more efficient manner. But that's just my rant for the day. I get to thinking about the mind-numbingly gross incompetence of some of the decision makers. And I don't know who did it and who decided it, but I'm like, this is a fiasco.
That's definitely an issue that I'm going to be having on my radar from this point forward and see what sort of things can be done to address that.
Another big issue was, of course, the voters, I think, spoke pretty loud on the convention center.
Yep.
What's your opinion on that?
I opposed it when it came time to vote on Prop A. So I opposed it. I thought it was a less than ideal plan. Everything that I'd seen shows that for the money that we were spending, we were going to have a smaller stadium than Lubbock. I think it was a smaller stadium than Midland. I'm trying to remember. But for the price tag and the extra stuff that was attached to it, I don't think it was an ideal plan for us.
I think that's one of those wants.
I agree.
You know, we all want something nice and fancy, but to me, we should take care of them. What we hire them to do, which is keep our streets safe, the potholes fixed, the water and sewer and trash, and focus on the infrastructure And then if you do that, then I think you'll see other things come, and private companies will come and say, hey, Amarillo does a great job taking care of what's important. We're going to come in there and we're going to build a convention center or whatever. If it's viable, they'll build it.
Yeah.
Let the market work.
If there's enough money in it for them, they will do that. I do agree that we do need to take care of our infrastructure first. There's a lot of areas of Amarillo that are aging that do need to see some investment in there from the city before we start doing things like new city halls, things like that.
Yeah. Is there anything wrong with the current one?
I've heard some things, but it's kind of like the Civic Center. It's aging and it needs to be updated, brought up to code, that sort of thing. And I do agree that we do need to, do something with the Civic Center. But given the timing and given the discourse and the discussion that went along with the Prop A, I don't think Amarillo was ready for it. And I think they spoke pretty loudly about that.
Yeah. Well, to me, it ought to be what the voters want, not what the elected officials want.
I do agree.
What other issues that you know of that the voters are concerned about, that your people you talk to express to you?
There's a lot of the folks that I talk to kind of feel like the issues that they have going on in their daily lives aren't really easily or being noticed or being addressed by the city council.
And what kind of issues are we talking about here when you say that?
Well, the big one was like the food desert. There's going back to it, there's areas of Amarillo where you don't have easy access to fresh fruit, fresh produce. There's some areas of the city where, if you call the police response is prohibitive. Where the response isn't what it should be or what it is in other areas of the city.
What about the homeless situation?
As far as how to fix that?
Yeah.
I do think that there's a lot of things that we could do as far as getting nonprofit organizations to help. There's quite a few really good nonprofits in Amarillo that are doing a lot. I do think that the city could do more as far as implementing programs that can help folks that are homeless get jobs, help folks that are homeless get housing. I do think we can be doing a lot better on that. As far as how to fund that effectively, that's something I'm thinking about.
Well, it's a big problem across the country. My wife and I had put on a presentation for the city several years ago, and they took a lot of the ideas, and we cleaned up a lot of this area downtown, but in Elwood Park, and we got the alcohol ordinance extended over to Washington, which made a big difference. And the one thing that I wanted them to do, and we have a written proposal on it, but then they give it to the nonprofits, and of course they don't like it because they don't want the problem solved. They need those homeless people because that's how they make their money, and it's a problem. So we kind of have created a situation where we have people that claim they want to help, but they're actually wanting to make it worse for their own benefit. Mm-hmm. And that's what I saw. But it's a pretty simple thing to fix, and it's just most people don't have the courage to do it. They don't want to do it because it takes effort. Yeah. They just want to hand out food and make themselves feel good and say they did something for the homeless when in fact they're enabling them.
Well, I think we need both kinds of effort. We need people to take care of those immediate needs, and then we have to have people that also work towards those long-term needs, like getting a job, getting housing.
Well, most of those people that are, a lot of them aren't homeless. As a matter of fact, the ones that panhandle in the streets, which I think should be illegal. If I go stand in the street and talk to somebody, they're going to arrest me, but they'll let the panhandlers do it. And one of them's going to get run over. I mean, I've come close to running over a couple of them more than once. You don't see them, and they dart out from behind a car in the middle of an intersection. And it's a problem. To me, that should be a no-brainer. You shouldn't be able to panhandle in the street. And I think they should give the people who give them money the ticket, because that person's enabling that person instead of making that person go to work. A lot of them live over here in Bivens in a pretty nice house. There's about 10 of them, and they make about $200 a day.
I'm going to disagree with you there. I don't think we should punish the people being panhandling. Or at the very least, you shouldn't punish the folks that are homeless and aren't able to find a place to sleep at night, or aren't able to.
But there's plenty of places for them to sleep at night. They don't want to follow the rules.
There are plenty of places, but having access is not the same as having easy access. Yes, you are able to go to the shelters if you can make your way there. There are some nonprofits that will give rides. Code Blue's one of them. The warming station, they'll give you rides to the warming station, but it's still a pretty small team. I don't think you should punish the folks that are in legitimate need because of the folks that are, getting some money.
Well, you're assuming that those people that are panhandling on the corner are in legitimate need.
Yeah, I'm assuming that.
You believe that?
What harm does it do to me to assume that?
Because if you run over one of them, you're going to have the liability.
You haven't had that happen yet?
We haven't?
Mm-mm. And I have liability insurance.
2 blocks from here, they ran over one with a trash truck.
That's a big problem.
Killed him. It happens. And only because of the people paying attention have more of them not got run over.
So why is that not an argument for safety and awareness?
Because
instead,
it's against the law to be wandering in the middle of the street outside of a crosswalk. If I do it, they call it jaywalking and they give me a ticket. And I think they should enforce that for the safety of the homeless. I think you're putting those people at risk by letting them wander wherever they want on the street. That's what I think.
I do agree that there is a risk there.
But, I mean, why? I don't understand why the city doesn't enforce that. Maybe they want them to get run over. I don't know. Maybe that's the plan.
Do they enforce it on you often?
I drive pretty much everywhere anymore. I don't tend to walk. If I was in New York, where you walk everywhere, I would probably get a lot of tickets because I would do the same thing.
Well, I'm sure the homeless in New York also get tickets for jaywalking.
Well, what about the other issue? Is a big problem is trespassing. They're trespassing on private property. They're breaking in to vacant buildings, but the city won't prosecute them. And the reason they won't prosecute them is because trespassing is a state crime. And it costs too much, right? They don't want to have to call in a jury and go through the process. I was told one time what that cost was, and it was, like $20,000 or something just to prosecute a trespassing case. So they don't. And they know this. So they go break in, shack up in a vacant building somewhere or vacant house, and then it gets cold and they burn it down. A lot of them have gotten killed doing that. There's another one a couple blocks from here that burnt the house down and killed them. I think 2 or 3 of them. To me, what they ought to do, and I proposed it to them a long time ago, and they never would do it because they didn't want to have to put forth any effort. But to me, and because we did a lot of research in all over the country and what worked and what didn't work. You know, Florida, San Antonio actually did a pretty good job. I mean, they had some really good ideas that they implemented that worked. I forget the name of the location in Florida. It wasn't St. Lucie, but one of those little towns down there. Did a lot of really good things that helped. And what they found was that if they gave drop trespassing to a Class C misdemeanor, solved the problem. Because they had a ticket.
And the city was able to prosecute that?
Well, yes. Yeah, it's cheap to prosecute, and it stops it from happening because they don't want a ticket, because they don't want to be searched and they don't want to go to jail. So if they get a ticket, they're gone, and they won't do that because they don't want the ticket. But if they get charged for trespassing, they know it's just going to disappear. Which I thought was kind of fascinating. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's psychological. They do not want to get a ticket. Because if they don't pay it, then there's a warrant for them.
Yeah.
And then they go to jail, and they do not want to go to jail.
I don't think I'll agree with you on that. I don't think that punishing the poor is going to do anything but perpetuate that cycle of poverty, and you're just going to have them back on the street again. Only this time, now they have a criminal record.
So so you think theft is okay?
Mm-mm.
Destruction of property?
Mm-mm.
Well, I said we're talking about trespassing.
Mm-hmm.
If you trespass on somebody's private property, that's a crime. So you think it's okay to commit crime if you're poor?
No.
Okay, did I mishear you?
No, I don't think you should be punishing people for being poor. I think we should have other avenues.
Well, the government punishes us for being poor all the time.
Yeah. They shouldn't.
Well, then you're talking about a free economy instead of the managed economy we have now. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, being homeless and being poor, I think are two different things. There could be some very wealthy people that they could have a lot of assets, but maybe they're homeless. So I'm not 100% sure that goes. But to say somebody shouldn't be punished for a crime because they're poor, I'm not following that.
Violent crimes, property crimes are, to me, in a different category than simply camping in the park.
So you think it's okay to camp in a public park?
I think the way we punish it is draconian.
And how do we punish it?
By like for the tent city that they raided a couple years ago. They were passing out fines, if I remember right. They were arresting some folks. It has been a couple years, so my memory may be faulty on that.
Well, if you would read the proposal we came up with, what we determined is if you're going to help them, you need to help them, which means a full array of services, which means you need a place that you can bring these people in, process them, help them with their mental illness if that's what they have, but you've got to be willing to do it. You can't halfway do it. And then you need treatment centers for the people that have drug addiction and alcohol issues, and you need to have a safe harbor where they can go out of sight of the public to where they can be with their clan, other homeless people, where they can drink their booze and shoot their drugs or whatever it is that they do, rather than have it spread all over town. That's step one, and that's what they've done in all these major cities where they've actually solved the problem. It takes some effort. You've got to have mental health people. You've got to have the facilities. And we could do that here. But if you want to solve the problem, that's how you have to do it. You can't halfway do it. And then you have to enforce your laws. You know, the problem with communities is when they stop enforcing the laws on small crime, everything else goes to pot. And here comes the big crime. That's just the natural order of things because they know they can get by with it. But if you enforce the rules at the low end of the deal, well, like Rudy Giuliani did in New York, you know, then everything cleans up. It's really not very complicated.
I do like that proposal that you put forward. We should have some sort of structure in place to help those folks.
But to just throw them out, I guess what I'm saying is they just let them wander wherever and throw them out in the community where they're endangered. They could hurt other people. They could hurt themselves. Other people could hurt them.
We're half-assing what we're doing to help those folks.
Right.
We shouldn't be half-assing it. It's going to take money to do that, though. It's going to take a lot of coordination. It's going to take community effort. It's going to take effort on private enterprise. It's going to take effort on nonprofits. We need to be having a conversation about, well, if these other cities have done it, why can't we do it? These folks are still our citizens. Just because they're not paying taxes right now in Amarillo doesn't mean they won't be. And they are paying sales tax. So,
well, what else? What other issues do you think you're going to tackle and solve for the citizens of Amarillo?
Good question. You know, I'm constantly thinking of things, constantly talking to folks. And if I have an issue brought to my attention, you know, I will consider it. And I will do what I can to maybe find a creative solution that hasn't been tried. Or if it was tried, actually implementing it if I get in. But I think that different areas of Amarillo have a lot of different things that we should be focusing on. So issues that are happening in South Amarillo aren't necessarily the issues that are going to be happening in North Amarillo.
Yeah, the difference between Randall and Potter County issues is pretty stark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree.
Well, very good. How do voters get a hold of you if they want to contact you? Do you have a website?
I've got a website, but I can't remember the URL. If you search for West for Amarillo, I'll pop up on Facebook. My name's Josiah West on Facebook, so if you look that up, you'll find me as well.
And how do you spell Josiah? Josiah?
Got it. And you can also call my cell phone. Can I plug that?
Sure.
So if you're interested, can't guarantee I'll answer because if a lot of y'all are calling, sorry. But you can reach me at 806-382-8289. I don't sleep, so feel free to call me.
I don't know that I'd mention that. You'll be having to shut your phone off about midnight when it's time to go to bed. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the voters of Amarillo and maybe why they should choose you over your opponents?
I mean, as far as choosing me over somebody else, I mean, all I can really say is that I like helping people, and I think this will give me a good avenue for it. Even if I don't win the election, putting myself out there, I'd love to help address some of the core problems that are going on in Amarillo, and hopefully bring everybody onto an even playing field as far as talking to your city government, or as far as having the opportunities that the other folks in Amarillo have.
Well, very good, Joe. We appreciate you coming by, and thanks for being here, and good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
All right.